The story opens on something that shouldn't exist. A small car parked off a dirt road outside Florence. Two young people inside. Dead. Same gun. Same pattern. And that's the problem. Because the man Italy swore was the Monster of Florence was already behind bars. Convicted. Forgotten. Case closed. Yet here it was again. The same marks. The same quiet precision. Someone had copied the signature perfectly. Or maybe the real killer had never stopped. Police officers froze. One of them whispered, "It's the same gun." No one answered. Everyone understood what that meant. For a long minute, the countryside was silent. Then, someone said the thing no one wanted to say.
We locked up the wrong man.
That's the moment everything breaks. And to understand how a country ended up here, terrified, humiliated, and still hunting a ghost, you have to rewind. Back to when Florence looked innocent. Back before fear found the hills. Florence sells beauty like it's a product. Tourists see marble domes and slow evenings, not the countryside that surrounds it. Narrow roads twisting between vineyards, pockets of darkness where no one bothers you. Locals used those roads. Teenagers drove out there to be alone. They parked, talked, kissed, argued about nothing. It was ordinary. It was safe. The first killings didn't feel like the start of anything. Just tragedy. A jealous boyfriend, people said. A crime of passion. The papers covered it once, then moved on. But then it happened again. Different couple, same setup, same weapon. A .22 Beretta. Same eerie neatness. And again. And again. 8 couples over nearly 2 decades. 16 people who thought they were safe in the dark. The pattern grew so obvious it became folklore. Whispers about Il Mostro. Parents warned their kids. Lovers stayed closer to the city. But no one wanted to admit Italy had a serial killer. That was an American disease, something from movies. Here, it would mean shame. It would mean the police, the church, the government, someone had lost control. So they told themselves it was random. Coincidence. Superstition. But the monster wasn't guessing. He had a system. He waited for weekends. He picked cars parked near water where sound wouldn't carry. He used the same gun every time. He watched from the trees until the right moment. Then, 2 shots. Sometimes 3. Always close. Always fast. Some investigators noticed the pattern and begged their superiors to see it. Others ignored it. Their careers depended on pretending Italy was still civilized. By the time the public accepted the truth, panic had already infected everything. Newspapers, politics, the quiet of the hills. The investigation became a storm. Hundreds of names, hundreds of theories. And somewhere in that mess, one name stuck. Pietro Pacciani. He was a farmer from the Mugello region. Heavy, sun-leathered, unschooled. He drank too much. He yelled at neighbors. He had a temper, and once, long ago, he'd been violent. To the police, that was enough. They painted him as the monster everyone needed. The papers printed his face beside the words, "Beast of Tuscany." People stopped caring whether the evidence fit. They just wanted the fear to have a shape. A few detectives didn't buy it. They said the timeline didn't work, that bullets from the crime scenes didn't match weapons he'd owned, that he couldn't have been in half those places when the killings happened. No one listened. Florence wanted closure, not questions. A trial would prove the system still worked. Pacciani became the perfect villain. He was convicted. Applause echoed in the courtroom. Families cried. Reporters cheered. For a few years, Italy slept easier. The monster had a name. The hills could go quiet again. Then, another couple died. Same method. Same .22 caliber signature. While Pacciani sat in a concrete cell eating prison stew. The lie cracked wide open. That single murder forced everyone to look back at what they'd ignored. The missed evidence. The forced confession rumors. The convenient narrative. the police who'd promised victory suddenly had to explain how their monster kept killing. And deep down, everyone already knew the answer. They'd never caught him. They'd only caught a story that felt tidy enough to believe. Florence turned from triumph to embarrassment overnight. Detectives whispered about new suspects, maybe a small group, maybe something ritualistic. Politicians buried files. Journalists circled like vultures. The truth was too complicated, so most people chose silence. Still, the image of those cars stuck. Always the same. A narrow road, windows fogged, radio off. Two people trying to hide from the world. They never knew someone else was already there, watching from the dark. That detail, the stillness, the repetition, became the symbol of the case. The monster wasn't chaos, he was control. And the system that hunted him was chaos pretending to be control. By now you can probably feel it building. We've seen the murders, the denial, the scapegoat, but the real question is how he managed to stay invisible for nearly 20 years. That part's next. Because the Monster of Florence didn't just kill people. He built a method that tricked an entire country into chasing the wrong man. He had a system, and no one saw it coming.
If Act 1 was about what happened, this part is about how he made it possible. People like to imagine killers act on impulse, a sudden break, a moment of rage. But whoever did this moved with discipline. He waited. He watched. He planned. That was the first thing investigators eventually agreed on. He didn't stumble into these couples. He selected them. You can almost picture his daytime life. Someone ordinary. Maybe he worked with tools, picked up groceries, nodded politely at neighbors. Someone who could walk through a Sunday market and leave no trace in anyone's mind. That was his armor. Not a mask. Ordinariness. At night, he became something else. The weekends were his hunting ground, not because they were convenient, but because that's when couples slipped away. Dinner, a late movie, a borrowed car from a cousin. Locals used those back roads like a shared secret. A pond here, an old stone wall there. The engine off. Just two people breathing in the dark. A man from a nearby village once told police, "I saw a figure watching the water. I thought he was a hunter. He didn't move for minutes." At the time, no one believed him. Afterward, everyone remembered his voice. The killer knew those roads too well, like he'd walked them since childhood. He picked spots where grass swallowed footsteps, where a car could sit for an hour without anyone driving past. He almost always chose places near water, where echoes died quickly. That wasn't coincidence. It was training. He made the same choices over and over until it felt like mathematics. 2 or 3 quiet shots, a body slumped, a quick check, gone. He never fired wildly, never emptied a magazine. He didn't need to. The .22 was small, but he used it like a surgeon. It wasn't personal. That's what disturbed investigators most. No rage, no theatrics, just a ritual. Sometimes he left small details that felt arranged. Not for the police, maybe not for anyone, just to satisfy himself. Almost like he wanted the memory of the moment to stay frozen exactly as he saw it. An investigator once said, "It was like he needed the scene to match the picture he had in his head." There's something unsettling about that. Not madness, but control. And control became the heart of his psychology. He wanted to witness intimacy, then end it. Not destroy love, interrupt it. Take that private moment and make it his. It's almost beautiful, in a terrible way. He stayed long enough to watch the couple settle in. Conversations, soft jokes, Maybe the shifting quiet that happens when two people choose to belong to each other for a night. Then he stepped forward and rewrote the story. That was the contrast, the warm inside of a car against the cold routine in his head. Investigators would later find footprints near more than one scene, just a few steps, always leading back into the trees, never toward the road, as if he arrived on foot. No tire tracks, no cigarette butts, nothing helpful. That's when some detectives started whispering that he wasn't working alone. One man kills, the other waits with a car, a lookout, a driver, two shadows, not one. And honestly, it made sense. How else could he vanish so cleanly? One investigator pushed that theory hard, a quiet man named Rotella. He noticed the weekend rhythm, the water, the careful distance between parking spots. He tried connecting the dots. He told his commander, "We need to look beyond the man with the gun." Nobody listened. He was moved off the case for being difficult. That happened a lot. The investigation became a revolving door. Teams changed, theories changed, files got moved, lost, relabeled. By the time new detectives arrived, the leads were cold and the hills were quiet again. A pattern began. The killer struck, police panicked, years passed, everyone relaxed. Then it happened again. Each murder came with the same message: I'm still here. The countryside began to change. Couples stopped driving out to the old lanes. Parents warned their kids. Farmers claimed they heard footsteps in the dark. Bars filled with rumors. He waits by the water. He listens. He watches first. It infected the rhythm of ordinary life. People couldn't sit by a river at night without thinking about the stories. And yet, daily life continued. The same woman still sold tomatoes in the market. Teenagers still rode scooters past the old bridges. Tourists still bought postcards of Florence at sunset. Normal life, sitting right beside obsession. That's what makes the story feel unreal. You could walk past the man in daylight, buy bread from the same counter, and never know anything was wrong inside him. Then came the moment when everything should have fallen apart. A young couple heard someone outside their car. Not footsteps, breathing. Just quiet, steady breathing near the window. They panicked. One of them shouted. The figure stepped back. Branches cracked. Silence. They sped away. When police checked the spot later, they found a footprint and a single shell casing in the grass. Fresh. It was the closest they ever came to catching him by accident. And still, nothing happened. Files moved. The lead dissolved. That tiny story matters because it proves something important. He wasn't invincible. He just had a system, and the system was smarter than the people chasing him. But systems can break. Sometimes all it takes is pressure in the wrong place. As the years passed, police pressure grew. Headlines demanded answers. Politicians demanded a face. People needed to believe someone could be blamed. The killer must have felt the heat too. He paused longer, struck farther from the city, became even more patient. But no one can stay invisible forever. His routine, his perfect structure, relied on police fighting each other, public fear staying manageable, and the countryside giving him endless hiding places. Those pieces held for a long time, almost 20 years. Eventually, though, one mistake changed everything. That's where this phase of the story ends. He built a system that worked far too well. It kept him hidden, made the police look foolish, and convinced a nation to chase the wrong man. Then something small, almost ordinary, slipped out of place. And that's when his perfect system collapsed. The collapse began with a single contradiction. A forensic analyst noticed that one of the bullets recovered from a new scene matched an older killing. That shouldn't have been possible, because the man blamed for those older murders was already behind bars. The analyst checked again. Same microscopic striations. Same weapon. A quiet comment circulated among investigators. "We need to look again." No one wanted those words. They felt like a confession. At first, senior officials tried to bury it. They said it was contamination, coincidence, a bad memory. But the file would not stay still. A timestamp in the earlier report placed the original murder on a night when the accused man, Pietro Pacciani, was verifiably elsewhere. Another thread pulled loose. A young prosecutor reviewed the evidence and whispered to a colleague, almost apologizing, "None of this holds." The room stayed quiet. No one objected. No one defended the old verdict. It was the kind of silence that means everything. Appeals began. Paper moved faster than truth. The case that once felt settled began to shrink under its own weight. The courtroom atmosphere flipped from relief to dread. No gun, no direct link to victims, timelines that bent when touched. The judges didn't announce a dramatic revelation. They simply said there wasn't enough. It was like gravity, not mercy. The conviction was overturned. Pacciani walked out of prison into a crowd that did not know how to see him. Some people stared. Others stepped back. A reporter asked, "What do you want now?" He said, "To go home." You could hear the exhaustion in his voice, as if he'd forgotten what home even meant. His neighbors didn't welcome him. Shutters stayed closed. People crossed to the other side of the street. A teenager threw a stone at his gate one night and ran. Even the ones who believed he was innocent avoided him. In a small place, being infamous is its own kind of prison. Inside the house, he sat at a small table. A woman who knew him said he would drink coffee and stare at nothing, like his mind was still locked inside a room somewhere far from Tuscany. The families of the victims were lost again. Their certainty had been taken. A mother said, "I slept better when I hated him." She wasn't being cruel. She was telling the truth. Hate can feel like safety. Doubt is harder. Some kept small rituals. One father washed his son's coffee cup every Sunday, drying it with the same cloth he had used for years. It was no longer memory. It was survival. Investigators tried to rebuild their theory. 2 men from Pacciani's circle were charged. There were claims about strange meetings, whispered rituals, hidden hills. It felt desperate, like the system was searching for anyone who could fit the hole in the story. Courtrooms filled again. Some jurors believed, some didn't. Verdicts shifted like sand under rain. One detective, older now, shook his head outside the courthouse and said, "We are throwing rope at the wind." No one answered. The countryside changed in quiet ways. People avoided certain roads at night. Couples went home earlier. Bars grew cautious with their gossip. At some point, a retired officer stood on his porch, staring at the hills, and said to a friend, "We were loud when we should have listened." He meant that the answers might have been simple, but everyone had wanted a dramatic story instead. Meanwhile, Pacciani weakened. His health slipped. He spent most days alone. When he died, it happened quietly in his house. Natural causes, they said. A single newspaper ran a short headline. "Farmer at center of monster case dies." There was no funeral crowd, no speeches. Just a man leaving a world that never truly decided who he was. That should have been the ending, but endings rarely arrive right when they're needed. A few investigators kept their notes. One of them, a man whose voice had gone soft with age, sat by a river and told a journalist, "This is where sound dies. We never listened the right way." He wasn't blaming anyone else. He was holding his own regret. Another detective said something that stayed with me. "We didn't catch a man. We caught a feeling." He looked embarrassed after saying it, as if truth shouldn't sound poetic. With time, theories multiplied. Some believed the killer acted alone, a quiet hunter who learned the land like a second skin. Others believed there were two of them, splitting the work, one who watched, one who pulled the trigger. A few insisted someone with influence protected the real man. None of these theories have been proven. None have been disproven. That, strangely, is what keeps the story alive. If you pull back and look at the whole picture, the hills, the cars, the weekend rhythm, you start to see how much of this story was about routine. A man hiding inside a pattern, a system built on patience. The image that returns is always the same. A car parked near water, windows fogged from two people whispering inside, someone watching from the darkness, closer than they ever imagined. It is an image that refuses to leave. The case files ended up in quiet rooms, stacked in boxes stamped with numbers. When someone opens them now, the pages breathe a little dust. So many dates, so many maps, so many careful lines drawn by people who never found what they were looking for. Florence went on selling beauty. It's very good at that. Tourists buy postcards at sunset. Photos erase the roads that slip out into the dark. But the locals know them. They know the curves in the countryside, the strange calm that lives near the water at night, the feeling that watching and being watched can change places without warning. Sometimes a car slows on one of those roads. The engine clicks. A door closes. And for a second, you remember the first scene of this story. Two people in the dark, trusting the night more than they should. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe the world stays normal. Or maybe the routine waits for someone new to step into it. I don't know the truth here. No one does. The case isn't unsolved because no one tried. It's unsolved because sometimes the simplest stories refuse to sit still. After all the trials and files and theories, what remains is quiet. A wrong man carried a name that was never his. A real man walked free, leaving almost no trace, and the hills kept their own secrets. Maybe the most dangerous place is inside a routine.